The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. We're pleased to have Delegate Betsy Carr with us this morning. And as we begin the first full week of the 2016 legislative session, Delegate Carr, I'd like to get your thoughts about the governor's opening address last Wednesday on the state of the Commonwealth.
Thank you, Woody. Thank you for having me here today. I think the governor, as usual, presented a very aggressive, energetic agenda for us, for the General Assembly, and I look forward to supporting him in areas like public safety and appropriations and so forth where I'm serving. The governor, as you may know, made a major investment, is making a major investment in public education. He feels that this is one of our greatest ways of helping our citizens, our young people, helping Virginia to be the best that it can be. It's also a very big priority for folks in the 69th District, which I have the privilege of representing. We have education, workforce issues, helping our young people who get out of college or get out of technical schools to be prepared to take the jobs that are there, to have the students and people prepared to enter the workforce. Also, economically, it's a big thing to have people who have perhaps served their time and then coming back into the workforce. One of the bills that I'm presenting is traditionally called Pay in the Box, but we really prefer to call it workers rejoining the workforce. That's another big issue. Another thing is reforming our juvenile criminal justice system. As the governor mentioned, he had just visited Beaumont and the two criminal justice facilities in the area. They're big cement kind of factories that are really equipped to house many more people than are there now, and they're not being effective. Our cost is over $150,000 per person per year, and it's not doing any good. We have an 80% recidivism rate. So we need to be adjusting this so that transforming this so it really makes a difference for the people that we're serving, trying to educate, trying to rehabilitate, and getting them back into being fulfilling citizens in our state.
And I know you have a very ambitious agenda, much of it tied to the governor's as well, but let's step back and talk about education, because I know you have a keen interest in education.
Yes, I do.
You served on a local school board.
Yes, I
Talk
did.
to us about the needs there.
Well, we have our Virginia, I think back in 2008, cut funding for education, and yet we have more students today that need education. So the governor's putting in money, I think $1 billion more for the education budget. And this will provide more teachers in the classrooms. Again, we're looking at the SOL reforms.
Those are the standards of learning,
yes.
I believe.
And then just the whole issue of preparing our students. The governor also has a initiative about kind of transforming high school education, middle school education. Our students, people learn different today. We have different opportunities, and we need to prepare our citizens, young people coming out into the workforce, to work in today's society. We have a global economy. We have people working in teams. People need to have to know code, computers. And we need to adjust this when people are when they are looking at this, when we're educating our young people in high schools and so forth. So the governor has put in an initiative to kind of transform that way. I know our Secretary of Education, Ann Holton, has a background that really lends to being able to help in all these areas of education, helping our young students who had been aging out of foster care. You know, we turn them loose when they're 18 and they're not ready, you know, they don't have the support of family and so forth. That's another issue that is being worked on. In the city, you know, it's representing the city. There are a couple of initiatives that I'm involved in. There's something called co-patroning a bill with Danny Marshall from Danville about, it's called land banking. Doesn't have anything to do with eminent domain. What it does have to do, this will help both provide opportunity for both urban areas and rural areas, will provide, allows either nonprofits or governments to set up land depositories. And what this does will allow blighted properties that are perhaps not commercially viable for nonprofits to take them over and put them into good use for our citizens. And so, you know, it's effective and good stewardship and land use.
Now, back to education, are there any pay raises in the governor's initiatives?
Yes, for our school personnel.
And in terms of standards of learning reform, I know there's been a lot of discussion over the past couple of sessions about the number of tests administered, the administrative burden that places upon school districts, teachers, and the pressure it brings to bear on students. How do you see the General Assembly dealing with those issues as well?
Well, you may know I have some experience with something called the MICA initiative, which in the Richmond area started over 15 years ago, and it's a partnership between elementary schools and faith communities across the board. We have probably over 130 different faith community partnerships with the elementary schools in Richmond. And so through my work at that and Woodville Elementary School in Richmond's East End, I'm familiar with a lot of the challenges that a locality like Richmond face, where we have a lot of students who don't have the opportunity that some of the students coming from suburban areas or more economically privileged and well-off areas. But so the students, for instance, you know, in my experience is that they're taking tests on computers. Well, they don't have everyday opportunity to work with the computer. So taking a test on a computer, again, they're already kind of behind the 8 ball. The fact that they are the teachers have to spend so much time preparing for tests. You know, we need to be looking at teaching our students how to think and problem solve, work in teams, other kinds of things. So all of those issues we need to address with the education. And I think, you know, I think you'll see a lot of things in the budget and as we move forward in legislation. I know there's a lot of things on the legislative agenda concerning education.
How important is funding for pre-K, for example?
Well, again, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's really, you know, it's essential. Just hearing somebody say you can hear kindergarten teachers can tell you like in 2 minutes whether a student has had pre-K education or not. That prepares them for the learning. They can't learn until they've had kind of a basic preparation. And again, you know, all the research that shows how much of the brain is formed, vocabulary use, all of that is so determined in early years, by age 3, by age 5. So we need to preparing our citizens, we need to be looking at this.
And of course, that's a real critical barometer at the third grade reading level,
Yes,
is it not?
yes.
And I guess there's an old saying, you need to learn to read and then you read to learn.
That's right, that's right.
Tell us something about, there's a community wealth building fund that you're
Yes,
involved
this
in
is
as
another
well.
thing that's coming before our, there's a budget amendment in about this, but as you may know, Richmond, that under the leadership of the mayor's initiated, but Thad Williamson has been working on our what we call community wealth building. It's kind of breaking down the barriers. What this measure would do is kind of allowing for the breaking down of the silos of the ways that our areas attract poverty, economic development stuff, instead of having in little areas, to kind of look at a comprehensive approach to all of these areas, and so therefore be more effective totally in decreasing poverty, increasing economic development, for instance, in those. So what this called as a community wealth building will be kind of available for, again, for urban areas. Richmond kind of has a pilot in this and has kind of paved the way in kind of this approach. Norfolk also has an area, but this would also be helpful in our rural areas too. So we're looking at that as a possibility.
So making sure that all of those who work towards ending poverty or improving low-income people, instead of focusing on one subject matter, that they work together.
That's right, that's right. And then, again, it moves into economic development, so all areas of the spectrum.
And of course, you mentioned workers rejoining the workforce.
Yes.
Give us a little bit more detail. I know you used the term ban the box, but it's generically part of the workers rejoining the workforce.
That's right.
And banning the box really means what?
Well, that's a kind of what Richmond, again, has done that, but that when somebody goes for a job interview, there's a little box on the front of the application, have you ever served time? And so, the thought and experience of some is that when that's on there and that box is checked, the application is just kind of put aside, not even considered. And whereas the fact is, if a lot of times if I had served time and you were interviewing me, you might, well, that person deserves you might be interested in hiring me, or I might have skills that would be helpful. And then, well, you can, on the back page or interview with me, you can find out that you're willing to give me a chance. And so that is, don't see any reason why I wouldn't, possibly be a good worker for you. So that is what we're trying to do, is just trying to not have that as just knocking off first come. And so I think that as you know, Virginia is like one of the fourth worst states in voting rights and so forth. So that, economically it makes big sense, because if we can, people who come out of having served their time and can't get a job, they might return to ways that are not as beneficial to them and society, rather than being able to get a job, feel good about themselves, and participate in, be a contributing member of society.
So in other words, those who have served their debt to society as a result of criminal activity will at least be given an opportunity for an interview. That's for right. A potential employer.
And what the governor has done this in one area, what we would do, have it in all state employment. Not, this would not be telling private employers what to do, so we're not.
And of course, a private employer could still reject you or I.
That's right.
Under
that's right.
whatever
that's right.
circumstances that may be. Now,
and they can still put on this is not about them they can have that on their application.
Right. As a matter of fact, in terms of those who have served their time and whose rights have been restored, we're talking about a lot of those folks. You talked about voting rights, but those folks whose rights have been restored are looking for employment.
That's right. That's right. As one of my colleagues said, people would rather have you know, the voting right is great, and that's really important, but also people want a job. They want to be able to work, and so that's the other aspect
And
of
of
this.
course, that's all part of workforce development
That's
and
right.
economic development,
That's right.
is it not?
That's
Talk
right.
to us about how we do that, especially in terms of our community colleges.
Oh, community colleges are really terrific in helping prepare our students. They will provide a way for people to, maybe they're not sure they want to go to college, or maybe not, college is not for them, they don't know yet. But community college kind of offers a way for them to either find out about that or also provide certificates and skills so that they can be hired by companies. We have a number of companies that are in Virginia, and they want to hire competent, well-trained workers, and they need to be prepared for this. So, you know, they don't, maybe the workers that they need don't necessarily need to go to college, but they need to have the training, and the training from the community colleges needs to be matched up with what our workforce needs.
Now we have J. Sargent Reynolds,
Yes,
which is a local community
Yes.
college. What kinds of courses, certificates does J. Sargent Reynolds offer?
J. Sargent Reynolds, I just had the privilege of talking with Gary Rhodes the other day, and they were talking about health care opportunities, things like you know, there's a big need for welding, just a number of things that they even have culinary aspects, but I think the big thing is the health care right now.
And of course, these are opportunities that high school graduates can take advantage of, but also
right.
veterans, for example, who are
Exactly.
returning from theaters
That's
of
it.
war.
And a lot of times our veterans have the skills that can be, you know, integrated and used right away in the workforce. And the governor's putting in their measures to make it easier for veterans, particularly again in health care and other areas, that have the skills so that they can be employed.
And I guess
Have certificates.
a good example of that is a veteran who may have served in the medic corps.
That's right. That's right.
And they come back, and obviously they have great experience. They may not have academic credentials,
Right.
but I think the program you're referring to will allow them to get a certificate pretty easily.
Right. And I'm very, you know, we have a lot of Virginia's most veteran-friendly state. I have the privilege of serving in an area where we have the McGuire Veterans Hospital, as well as the Virginia War Memorial in our district, and familiar with a lot of the veterans that have served well and done so much for our state, and we want to be able to hold them up and continue to do what we can. Also, the issue about the governor has been the first one to declare that Virginia, we have no longer functionally homeless veterans, and so that's a big achievement, I think, for the
And
state.
there's a program called Virginia Values Veterans,
That's right,
I
that's
believe.
right.
And I believe that there's 2 new service centers that are going to be open in the state.
Yes, yes.
One in Northern Virginia, one in Hampton
Yes,
Roads, I
yes.
believe, sometime in the near future. Continuing with our community colleges, there's a program that allows a student who's a graduate with a certain grade point average to be automatically
Yes.
admitted to our
Yes.
institutions of higher
Yes,
learning. Talk
yes.
about that.
The students can, you know, the families can save a lot of money. The student goes, performs well in the community college. They have automatic admission to our 4-year universities and colleges. So that is a wonderful way for students to kind of get used to being in a college, higher education environment, and then moving on to the larger university.
And what about additional funding for our institutions of higher
Yes,
learning?
the TAG grants have been increased, so instead I think it's 31 to 35, so that students who are going to private colleges can receive that help.
And I think there's still a great emphasis not only at the junior college level, but also at the institutions of higher learning for an emphasis on science, technology, engineering, math, and also health, as you had indicated earlier.
Yes, And then don't forget the arts people will make
Absolutely.
that STEAM, so they
Absolutely.
put that arts
Absolutely.
in there. But you know, there's a lot of again, I have a lot of folks who are supportive of the arts, who work in the arts, have integral positions and have done work in that area. Virginia, we can be very proud of our participation in the arts.
And this is also critical in terms of what the governor talked about relative to fashioning a new Virginia economy,
That's right.
making sure that we are no longer as dependent as we are on the federal government.
That's right.
And encouraging more private employment in the
That's
state.
right, exactly. We're looking for new ways, being creative about what we're doing with our workforce, our economy, tourism. But the governor keeps saying that we've got a reprieve of 2 years on sequestration. So we want to take advantage of that and find out as many ways to open up our economic opportunities for our citizens.
And that sequestration were just across-the-board cuts, which really hit Virginia in terms of the federal government support.
Yes, because as you probably know, Virginia was like one of the major benefactors of government contracts and so forth.
Talk to us a little bit about another one of your initiatives, Safe Reporting to Save Lives.
Oh, thank you very much. That was something we worked on last year, and very pleased that that had been successful. But we worked with the House Courts Committee, did that for a couple of years. But the bottom line of that is that, as you probably know, heroin overdose, accidental death has been one of the major things. But not only that, you can go the other with alcohol, for instance. Young students maybe have a buddy or something that looks like they're out or passed out in the dormitory or whatever, and the student may be afraid to call in to report that student, because maybe the student has been drinking also. So what this law does was that we call it Good Samaritan. Lets that person, they won't be penalized if they stay there when they call the police and report it, and they give them all the information and cooperate with that, then they will not be penalized. So that's, it's the whole range of things. So pleased that we received a national award for that, for work in that. But I think that's a good thing moving forward in terms of, I think one of the big things is the education for our citizens, just getting out that knowledge. If that happens, just to get out that word. Now, it had a word from about 3 different law enforcement folks who have said that it's already saved lives that in cases that they're familiar with. So we've done, pleased that we've moved forward in that direction. Obviously, a lot more work needs to be done. But
you needn't be afraid to report if you want to help someone.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's right.
Now, for years, you've been involved in very significant women's issues in the city and also in the region. Talk to us about the centennial concerning the women's right to vote.
And so in 2020 will be the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage, and so we're putting in, again, a commission. Went down last year just because of technicality, but the Library of Virginia has plans for that. The League of Women Voters. This is a big event for the 100th year, and so we will have studies and celebrations and so forth. One other celebration that I've been involved in, or commemoration, is of World War I. That has been the 100th. We've been working on a committee across the state for the commemoration of World War I. And people, 2 things, I kind of got involved just because you may know the Carillon at the end of the boulevard is actually the official World War I memorial of the state to here. And so many people ride by it and they know about Bird Park and they know about Dogwood Dell, but they don't know about all that this is the official commemoration of that, the building. And people, has been, with the 100th year, there's kind of been a whole lot of, we're involved with the National Commission of World War I, the sense being that this is kind of the last opportunity to help the public to permeate the public consciousness of the importance of World War I. So many things that are happening today are due to leftovers from World War I, even World War II, the Red Cross, a number of things on the home front, not only in war. Virginia was a big piece, had a big role in World War I. A lot of the troops went out of here. All of the horses and mules that were so important in World War I, they were so important in World War I in Europe that actually the Germans sent over people to sabotage and to get rid of the horses because they were so important. So there are just a number of things that happened here. We had some industries and so forth that were participating. So just all of that effort. And, you know, one of the major things that this does is it shows, you know, when we value and honor the people who sacrificed for World War I, our veterans who were there, that also gives a message to our veterans today to tell them how important their service is and that 100 years from now, they will not be forgotten.
So I take it this is going to be as big a celebration as the sesquicentennial was in terms of celebrating the Civil War.
Right. You know, in fact, we'll be doing some stuff probably in the legislature that will affect this, but we will probably be combining with the commemoration for the World War II. Their 75th year, so you know this will kind of be holding up both of these things. And Cheryl Jackson, I'm happy to say, who did such a fantastic job with our Civil War commemoration, will also be heading this up. So you know they know how to do things, contact the communities. They've kind of gotten everything ready, and so they know how to do this. And she's very excited to be doing this. We have a lot of wonderful historians and activists and so forth around the state. So we're really excited about this effort.
I don't want to circle back for our last minute for those who may have just joined us to go back to your land banking legislation, which is very important. So why don't you give us
just briefly, that will help again, the rural and the urban areas. In fact, is a way. It will provide a way to provide a way to transform blighted property that is not commercially viable. So either localities can set up the bank. As I said, it doesn't have anything to do with eminent domain, but it will allow for people, either localities or nonprofits, to use this property that's not commercially viable.
Great. Well, thank you for being with us today, Delegate Betsy Carr. We wish you luck in the 2016 legislative session.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.